The Starlight Wanderer drifted through the empty void of space, its sleek blue hull glinting in the light of a distant star. Inside the main bridge, Captain Elira gazed out at the star map projected before her. Her large, silver eyes blinked slowly as she considered their next destination. "Captain, all systems are running at optimal levels," First Officer Marin reported, his thin fingers dancing across the control panel. Like all Talarians, both he and Elira stood just over 5 feet tall, with slender limbs and delicate features, adapted to their homeworld's gentle gravity and peaceful evolutionary path. Elira nodded, her translucent skin showing the faint blue pulse of her circulatory system. "Good. We should reach the next survey point within 12 hours. The Talarian science vessel had been mapping this sector for nearly 3 months. Their mission was simple: document new star systems, catalog habitable planets, and avoid conflict. The Talarian Confederation had evolved without major predators on their homeworld, developing advanced technology through cooperation rather than competition. Their ships were built for scientific discovery, not combat. "Captain," called Communications Officer Trell from his station, "I'm detecting an unusual energy signature at coordinates 387642. Elira turned, curiosity piqued. "Put it on the main display." The holographic projection shifted, showing a pulsing red dot against the star map. "It doesn't match any known Talarian or allied ship," Trell continued, his voice growing concerned. "The energy pattern is aggressive." Before Elira could respond, the ship's sensors blared an urgent alarm. 3 dark shapes appeared on the scanner, approaching rapidly from behind a nearby asteroid field. "Unknown vessels on intercept course," called the sensor operator, her voice rising in pitch. "They're powering up weapon systems." Elira felt her dual hearts quicken. Combat was rare in this part of the galaxy. The Talarian Confederation had treaties with most spacefaring species. "Activate defensive shields," she ordered. "Prepare engines for emergency jump." The bridge crew scrambled to comply, but fear slowed their movements. Talarians weren't built for crisis situations. Their bodies produced overwhelming stress hormones at the first sign of danger, an evolutionary response, meant to encourage flight rather than fight. The main view screen switched to show their pursuers. 3 black ships with jagged, predatory designs closed in rapidly. Their hulls bore no insignia, no identifying markers. "Pirates," whispered Marin, his skin paling to a sickly white. The first impact rocked the Starlight Wanderer, sending crew members tumbling from their stations. The lights flickered, then stabilized as backup systems engaged. "Shields at 60%, called the defensive systems operator. "They're using focused ion cannons. They're trying to disable us, not destroy us." A cold dread settled in Elira's stomach. Ships disabled by pirates were rarely found again. Their crews disappeared without a trace. "Jump drive status?" she demanded. "T." Engine officer shook his head. "The gravitational disturbance from the nearby star is too strong. We need to move at least half a parsec before we can safely jump." Another blast rocked the ship. This time, several consoles exploded in showers of sparks. "Shields at 30%, hull breach on deck 4. Elira gripped the arms of her command chair. "Emergency protocols. Alert all personnel to prepare for possible boarding. Security teams to vital areas." She knew their dozen security officers, armed with simple stun weapons, would be little match for pirates, but she had to try. The communications panel lit up with an incoming transmission. Trell hesitated before accepting it. A harsh face filled the screen, reptilian with vertical pupils and scales in mottled gray and green. Sharp teeth showed as the creature smiled. "Talarian vessel," the being hissed, its translator converting the sounds to understandable language. "I am Captain Drex of the Vex Acquisition Fleet. Your ship has been selected for salvage and your crew for processing. Power down your systems immediately." Elira stood, forcing steadiness into her voice. "This is a scientific vessel of the Talarian Confederation. We have no valuable cargo. Leave us in peace and there will be no consequences for this aggression." The Vex captain laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "Consequences? From Talarians? Your species is known throughout the galaxy for its weakness. You evolved without predators. We evolved as predators. The natural order is about to assert itself. The transmission cut. Seconds later, another blast hit the ship, more powerful than before. "Direct hit to our main engines," called the sensor operator. "We've lost propulsion." Red emergency lights bathed the bridge as the main power fluctuated. "They're launching boarding craft," reported Marin, his voice barely a whisper. Elira made her decision. "Trell, send an emergency distress call to Tellarian Command. Include our coordinates and situation report." Trell turned to his console, fingers shaking as he prepared the transmission. "Long-range communications are damaged, Captain. I can send a general distress call, but I can't target it specifically to our homeworld." "Send it anyway," Elira ordered, "to anyone who can hear it." As Trell worked, Elira activated the ship-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is Captain Elira. We are under attack by Vex pirates. All non-essential crew, proceed to escape pods. All others, prepare for potential boarding. This is not a drill." She turned to Marin. "Begin data purge protocols. Destroy all research and star charts. Nothing valuable can fall into their hands." On the view screen, they watched as 3 smaller craft detached from the Vex ships, heading directly for their hull. "Distress signal ready," Trell announced. "But the targeting system is malfunctioning. I can't control which direction it will go." "Send it anyway," Elira repeated. "Any help is better than none." Trell's fingers entered the final sequence. In his haste and fear, he transposed 2 critical numbers in the galactic positioning system. Instead of broadcasting toward nearby Allied space, the signal shot off in nearly the opposite direction, toward a sector marked as Avoid in their navigational database. "Message sent," he reported, unaware of his mistake. The distress call raced through space at faster-than-light speeds, carrying a simple message. "Tellarian science vessel Starlight Wanderer under attack by Vex forces at coordinates 872265. Boarding in progress. Any assistance appreciated, please hurry." The signal passed through empty systems beyond the normal patrol routes of allied species. It continued into a region most spacefaring races deliberately avoided, a zone containing a yellow star with a 3rd planet classified in the Galactic Registry as Extreme Death World. On the Starlight Wanderer, the first explosion signaled the Vex cutting through the outer hull. Security alerts blared from every deck. "They're in," Marin whispered. Elira stood tall, though fear made her legs weak. "Lock down the bridge. Arm yourselves with whatever we have. And pray that someone hears our call." Little did she know that their signal was already being received by a species unlike any the Tellarians had ever encountered. A species that evolved on a world of predators, disasters, and constant competition. A species whose response would forever change the galaxy's understanding of the word dangerous. The first Vex boarding party reached the science deck, their heavy footsteps echoing through the corridors. Behind sealed doors, Tellarian crew members huddled in fear, waiting for their fate. And far away, on a planet the Tellarians considered uninhabitable, the first human ships prepared to respond. Admiral James Jackson stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the vast emptiness of space through the reinforced viewport of the UES Defiance. At 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and weathered skin, he cut an imposing figure, even in the standard Navy uniform. 30 years of military service had left him with gray at his temples and a reputation for making the right calls in tough situations. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Wells from the communication station, "we're picking up a distress signal." Jackson turned, one eyebrow raised. Patrol Sector 7 was usually quiet. The edge of human space rarely saw much activity. "Source? Unknown, sir," Wells replied, adjusting his headset. "It's not a human frequency, and it doesn't match any Alliance signatures in our database." "Put it through," Jackson ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. The message wasn't in any human language, but the ship's advanced translation system quickly processed the alien words. "Tellarian science vessel Starlight Wanderer under attack by Vex forces at coordinates 87 to 2265. Boarding in progress. Any assistance appreciated. Please hurry." The bridge fell silent. First contact with a new alien species wasn't unheard of, but it wasn't an everyday occurrence either. Talarian? Jackson asked. Vex? Do we have any information on either species? Commander Rodriguez, the ship's executive officer, quickly pulled up data on her tablet. Very little, sir. Our xenobiology database has limited entries. Talarians are listed as a peaceful spacefaring race from a low-gravity world. The Vex are flagged as a hostile species known for piracy and salvage operations. Jackson nodded slowly. And the coordinates? About 3 hours away at maximum FTL, sir, reported the navigation officer. Outside our normal patrol route, but well within our operational range. Jackson didn't hesitate. In the century since humans had reached the stars, they had built a reputation for themselves, sometimes as reckless, often as unpredictable, but always as a species that answered calls for help. Set course for those coordinates, maximum speed, he ordered, and alert the rest of the battle group we're responding to this distress call. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, stepping closer to the Admiral. Protocol suggests we should consult with Fleet Command before engaging with unknown alien species. Jackson gave her a level look. Someone out there is in trouble, Commander. By the time we get approval from Command, it'll be too late. He turned to address the bridge crew. This is what we do. This is why we're out here. Around the Defiance, 4 other warships adjusted their course. The cruisers Intrepid and Valiant, and the lighter frigates Swift and Resolute. Together they formed Battle Group Sentinel, one of humanity's rapid response units patrolling the borders of human space. Jackson pressed the ship-wide communication button. All hands, this is the Admiral. We've received a distress call from an unknown alien vessel under attack by hostile forces. We are changing course to respond. This will be a combat situation involving first contact with at least one new species. All departments prepare accordingly. That is all. Throughout the massive warship, over 800 crew members sprang into action. In the armory, Marine squads checked their gear and loaded weapons. In medical, doctors prepared for possible alien casualties. In engineering, technicians ran diagnostics on shields and weapon systems. Lieutenant Maria Rivera stood in the center of the Marine staging area, watching her squad prepare. At 5'7" with short dark hair and intense eyes, she commanded respect from the 20 soldiers under her command. Listen up, she called, and the busy room fell silent. We're responding to an alien distress call. We don't know what these Talarians look like or what condition they'll be in. We also don't know much about the hostiles, these Vex pirates, except that they're boarding the Talarian ship. She paced in front of her squad, making eye contact with each Marine. That means we need to be ready for anything. Full combat exoskeletons, standard loadouts, and remember your first contact training. We might be rescuing people who've never seen a human before. Sergeant Cooper raised his hand. What about environmental concerns, Lieutenant? Different atmosphere, gravity, that kind of thing? Good question. Suit up with full environmental seals, Rivera replied. We'll deploy with helmets on. The ship AI has the limited xenobiology data we have on the Talarians. Low-gravity homeworld, atmosphere similar to Earth but higher oxygen content. Plan for potential injured civilians who may not tolerate our atmosphere. The Marines nodded, resuming their preparations with practiced efficiency. Unlike most spacefaring species, humans had evolved on a high-gravity world filled with predators and environmental hazards. Their bodies were built for endurance and strength, adaptations that made them surprisingly tough by galactic standards. Back on the bridge, Jackson studied the tactical display. Any update on those coordinates? We'll arrive in 2 hours and 47 minutes at current speed, sir, replied the navigation officer. And what do we know about that region of space? Jackson asked. Rodriguez consulted her tablet again. It's outside any claimed territory, sir. No major settlements or stations nearby. The closest outpost is a mining operation about a day's travel from the distress signal location. Jackson nodded. So whatever's happening out there, they're on their own unless we show up. Sir, Communications Officer Wells interrupted. I've been analyzing the distress signal. Based on transmission patterns, I believe it wasn't intentionally directed toward us. It appears to be a broadcast that happened to reach our sensors, meaning they don't even know we're coming, Jackson said quietly. No, sir. And based on the timestamp, the message is already about an hour old. The Admiral's expression hardened. Push the engines harder. I want us there in 2 hours. The engineers won't like that, sir, Rodriguez cautioned. They'll like it less if we arrive too late to help, Jackson replied. As the human battle group accelerated to dangerous speeds, the ship's AI began compiling all available information on both Talarians and Vex. The results were limited. Humans had explored only a small portion of the galaxy, but enough to develop preliminary combat and rescue strategies. In the medical bay, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Walker reviewed the Talarian biological data. Bipedal, oxygen-breathing, carbon-based, she muttered to her medical team. Similar enough that our emergency treatments should work, but we'll need to adjust medication dosages for their higher metabolism and lower body mass. Throughout the ship, preparations continued with methodical precision. The humans had no treaty obligations to the Talarians, no political reasons to intervene. They were responding for the simplest of reasons. Someone had asked for help. As the Defiance pushed its massive engines beyond recommended limits, Admiral Jackson watched the countdown timer on the main display. 2 hours until they reached the coordinates. 2 hours that might make all the difference for the aliens who had accidentally sent their distress call to the species most galactic civilizations avoided, the Deathworlders from the harsh planet Earth. Let's hope we're not too late, he said to no one in particular, his eyes fixed on the timer as it counted down the minutes until first contact. On the Starlight Wanderer, Captain Elira and her bridge crew huddled behind makeshift barriers. They had sealed the bridge doors, but the heavy pounding from outside told them it wouldn't hold much longer. How many crew members made it to the escape pods? Elira asked, her voice barely steady. First Officer Marin checked his tablet. 37 confirmed launches. That's about half our people. Elira nodded, taking small comfort in knowing some of her crew might survive. The remaining members were either trapped in sections overrun by the Vex or had chosen to stay and fight. A hopeless gesture for the peace-loving Talarians. Another powerful blow rocked the reinforced doors. Metal groaned under the strain. They'll be through in minutes, Trell whispered, clutching a simple stun pistol that looked woefully inadequate. Has anyone responded to our distress call? Elira asked, though she knew the answer. Their signal had been sent nearly 2 hours ago. Trell shook his head. No response. But our communication systems are heavily damaged. We might not be able to receive incoming messages. The pounding stopped suddenly. In the silence that followed, the Talarians exchanged nervous glances. What are they? Marin began, but was cut off by a new sound. A high-pitched whine of energy building up. They're using a plasma cutter, the engineering officer shouted. Everyone get back. The Talarians scrambled away from the door just as a bright blue line began to appear along its edge. The Vex were cutting their way in. It's been an honor serving with all of you, Elira said, standing tall despite her fear. If these were to be her final moments, she would face them with dignity. 2 light years away, the human battle group dropped out of FTL in a flash of distorted space. Sensors, full sweep, Admiral Jackson ordered the moment the Defiance stabilized. Find me that Talarian ship. The sensor officer worked quickly. Contact. 3 unknown ships surrounding a damaged vessel at coordinates 045 by 223. On screen, Jackson commanded. The main display lit up with the scene. A sleek blue ship clearly damaged, surrounded by 3 black jagged vessels. Small craft moved between them. Boarding shuttles. Life signs? Jackson asked. Numerous readings from all ships, sir. At least 2 distinct species based on biosignatures. Jackson didn't waste time. Tactical. Target the hostile vessel's engines and weapon systems. Communications. Broadcast on all frequencies. Standard first contact package, followed by a demand for the attackers to stand down. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Within seconds, the Defiance's message broadcast across space. a series of mathematical sequences establishing basic communication, followed by a simple message translated into over 50 known alien languages. Attention, unknown vessels. This is Admiral Jackson of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We are responding to a distress call from the ship you are currently attacking. Cease hostilities immediately and withdraw your boarding parties. You have 30 seconds to comply. On the bridge of the lead Vex ship, Captain Drek stared at his communication screen in confusion. Where did these ships come from? He snarled at his crew. Identify them. His tactical officer worked frantically. Unknown configuration, Captain. They don't match any known species in our database, but their weapons systems. The officer paused, eyes widening. They're military-grade, heavy armaments. Drex hissed in frustration. The Talarian science vessel had been an easy target. These new arrivals were clearly something else entirely. Still, he had his reputation to consider. They're bluffing, he decided. No one intervenes for Talarians. Prepare to fire on the lead ship. Show them who they're dealing with. Back on the Defiance, the 30-second window closed. No response. Sir, reported the communications officer. Wait, they're charging weapons. Jackson nodded grimly. They've made their choice. All ships execute Battle Plan Delta. Cruisers target the lead vessel, frigates take the flankers. Minimal force. Disable, don't destroy. The human battle group split apart with practiced precision, moving faster than the Vex ships could track. Before Drex could give the order to fire, the Defiance and Intrepid launched a synchronized barrage that struck his ship's main weapon emplacements with surgical accuracy. The Vex vessel rocked violently. Alarms blared across its bridge. Weapons offline, shouted Drex's tactical officer. Shield generators damaged. How did they target so precisely? Before Drex could respond, more impacts shook his ship. The human vessels moved with unexpected agility, their targeting systems finding vulnerabilities the Vex had thought well protected. On the flanking Vex ships, the situation was no better. The human frigates, swift and resolute, danced around them, their smaller size belying their deadly precision. Within minutes, both supporting pirate vessels had lost propulsion and weapons capability. Inside the Starlight Wanderer, the Vex boarding parties suddenly stopped their assault on the bridge. Their communication devices buzzed with frantic orders from their motherships. Captain, one Vex soldier reported, unknown warships have engaged our fleet. We're ordered to return immediately. On the bridge, Captain Elira and her crew listened as the pounding and cutting stopped. Through the viewport, they watched in amazement as the Vex boarding shuttles hastily detached from their hull and raced back toward their motherships. What's happening? Marin asked, hardly daring to hope. Trell, still at his damaged communication console, let out a sound of disbelief. Someone answered our call. Look. On his screen, a grainy image showed the incredible scene outside. The three Vex ships, now damaged and drifting, surrounded by 5 unknown vessels of sleek, powerful design. Who are they? Elira whispered, moving closer to the screen. I don't know, Trell admitted. Their communication protocols don't match anything in our database, but they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Let me hear it, Elira ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with a voice unlike any the Talarians had heard before, deeper, with different vocal patterns. Talarian vessel, this is Admiral Jackson of the United Earth Defense Fleet. The hostile ships have been neutralized. We're responding to your distress call. Do you require medical assistance or emergency evacuation? Earth? Marin repeated, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. I've never heard of it. Elira moved to the communication panel. With trembling fingers, she opened a channel. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Elira of the Talarian science ship Starlight Wanderer. We thank you for your assistance. Yes, we have injured crew members and significant damage to our life support systems. There was a brief pause before the response came. Understood, Captain Elira. We're sending medical teams and engineers to assist. Please prepare for boarding. Our personnel will arrive in environmental suits to minimize any biological concerns. As the communication ended, Elira turned to her crew with wide eyes. They defeated 3 Vex warships in minutes, she said in awe. Who are these people? Outside, the human vessels moved into a protective formation around the damaged Talarian ship. From the Defiance, 4 shuttles launched, carrying medical teams, engineers, and marine escorts. Lieutenant Rivera stood in the lead shuttle, checking her team's gear one final time. Her powered combat exoskeleton hummed quietly, adding 2 feet to her height and multiplying her strength tenfold. Each Marine wore similar armor, an impressive sight even to other humans. Remember, she told her squad, we're here to help. The Talarians are reported to be peaceful. They've never seen humans before, so they might be frightened by our appearance. Keep your movements slow and non-threatening. The shuttle pilot's voice came over the intercom. Approaching docking bay now, Lieutenant. Scans show atmosphere is thin but breathable for humans. Multiple life signs detected, some moving, some stationary. Rivera nodded. Helmet sealed until we assess the situation. Dr. Patel, your medical team stays behind us until we secure the entry point. As the shuttle maneuvered into the damaged docking bay of the Starlight Wanderer, humans and Talarians prepared for a historic moment. First contact between 2 species from vastly different worlds, brought together by a distress call that had found its way to the most unlikely of recipients. The human shuttle docked with a gentle thud against the Starlight Wanderer's damaged hull. Lieutenant Rivera's squad formed up at the airlock, weapons ready but pointed down. The medical team waited behind them, equipment cases in hand. Scans show multiple life signs ahead, Sergeant Cooper reported, checking his helmet display. Some of them don't match Talarian profiles from our database. Rivera nodded. Vex stragglers. They might be trapped or deliberately staying behind. She switched to the squad channel. Remember, non-lethal tactics if possible. We want prisoners who can answer questions. The airlock cycled open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the damaged interior of the alien ship. The atmosphere was breathable but thin, just as their scans had indicated. Move out, Rivera ordered. Secure a path to the bridge first. The Marines advanced with practiced efficiency, their powered armor making surprisingly little noise despite its bulk. Each suit enhanced the wearer's strength, speed, and durability. Adaptations humans had developed through technology rather than evolution. They encountered the first Vex just 2 corridors in. 3 reptilian aliens attempting to break into what appeared to be a storage room. Freeze! Rivera called out, her suit's external speakers translating into a basic galactic trade language. Drop your weapons. The Vex spun around, their yellow eyes widening at the sight of the armored humans. For a brief moment they stood frozen in shock, clearly not recognizing the species confronting them. Then one raised his weapon. A mistake. Before the Vex could fire, Cooper launched a non-lethal stun projectile. It struck the alien in the chest, releasing an electrical charge that dropped him instantly. The other 2 Vex threw down their weapons, raising clawed hands in surrender. Secure them, Rivera ordered. 2 Marines quickly bound the pirates with restraints while a third checked the storeroom door. Inside, they found 7 Talarians huddled together, their large eyes wide with fear. Rivera removed her helmet, revealing her human face. The Talarians gasped in unison. We're from Earth, she explained slowly, using the translator. We received your distress call. We're here to help. One Talarian stepped forward cautiously. You're not like any species we've encountered before. Rivera smiled, trying to appear non-threatening despite her armor. I imagine not. We need to get to your bridge. Can one of you guide us? The Talarian nodded, still staring with a mixture of fear and wonder. Follow me. I'm Medical Officer Liran. Our bridge is 7 decks up, but the lifts aren't working. Not a problem, Rivera replied. Lead the way. As they moved through the ship, they encountered more Vex pirates, some surrendering immediately upon seeing the armored humans, others foolishly attempting to fight. None lasted more than seconds against the Marines' superior training and equipment. They also found more Talarians, some injured, others simply hiding. The human medical team began treating the wounded while Marines secured each section. Yondaya species, Liran said as they climbed up an emergency access way. You move differently than most spacefaring races, with such purpose. How so? Rivera asked, easily keeping pace despite her heavy armor. Most evolved species avoid physical confrontation, Liren explained. It's inefficient, risky. The Vex are unusual because they maintained aggressive traits despite developing technology. Rivera didn't mention that humans had developed technology precisely because of their aggressive traits, not in spite of them. There would be time for cultural exchange later. They reached a sealed door with visible damage around its edges. This is the bridge, Liren said. The captain and senior crew barricaded themselves inside when the attack began. Rivera nodded to her communications specialist. Contact them. Let them know we're friendly. After a brief exchange, the damaged doors slowly slid open, revealing the Talarian bridge crew. They stood cautiously, staring at the armored humans. With expressions of awe and trepidation, a slender Talarian with captain's insignia stepped forward. I am Captain Alira. You are the ones who answered our distress call? Rivera removed her helmet again and saluted. Lieutenant Maria Rivera, United Earth Defense Fleet Marines. Yes, Captain. Our fleet intercepted your signal and responded. Alira studied the human with undisguised curiosity. Your fleet disabled 3 Vex warships in minutes. How is this possible? The Vex are known throughout this sector as dangerous predators. Rivera chose her words carefully. Earth developed differently than most worlds. We evolved with certain advantages in combat situations. Before Alira could ask more questions, Rivera's comm unit buzzed. Lieutenant, we've secured all decks, reported Sergeant Cooper. 23 Vex captured, 5 injured in resistance, no fatalities. Medical teams are treating 42 injured Talarians. Engineering teams report life support can be stabilized, but the ship's engines are beyond field repair. Understood, Rivera responded. She turned back to Alira. Captain, your ship is secure, but it can't travel under its own power. Admiral Jackson is offering to escort you to the nearest friendly port, or you can evacuate to our vessels. Captain Alira looked around at her damaged bridge, then back to the human. Lieutenant, I don't know how to thank you. Half my crew would be dead or captured if you hadn't arrived. No thanks necessary, Captain. We were just doing our job. First Officer Marin stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. Your job? Does your species routinely intervene in conflicts between unknown aliens? Rivera smiled. When someone calls for help, we answer. It's what humans do. The Talarians exchanged glances, clearly finding this concept novel. I have a question, Trell said, still at his damaged communication console. Your planet, Earth. It's not in any of our star charts or alliance records. Where exactly are you from? Rivera hesitated, then decided simple honesty was best. We're from what you call the restricted zone in Sector 8. The Talarian bridge crew fell silent. Alira's eyes widened. But that's classified as a deathworld zone. No advanced civilization could evolve there. The conditions are extreme: high gravity, atmospheric toxins, dangerous radiation levels, aggressive fauna. Yeah, we call it home, Rivera said with a shrug. It's not so bad once you get used to it. The Talarians stared in disbelief. Everything about their evolutionary biology had taught them that life adapted for peace and cooperation. Yet here stood representatives of a species that had not only survived, but thrived in conditions considered lethal by galactic standards. Captain Alira slowly extended her hand in what she hoped was a gesture of friendship. Lieutenant Rivera, it seems the galaxy has much to learn about your species. Rivera carefully took the Talarian's slender hand in her armored gauntlet. And we have much to learn about yours, Captain. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Jackson watched as human medical and engineering teams helped evacuate critically injured Talarians to the ship's advanced medical bay. Sir, Commander Rodriguez reported, we've detained the Vex captain. He's requesting to speak with you. Jackson nodded. Bring him to the conference room. 10 minutes later, the Admiral stood face to face with Captain Drex. The Vex pirate, despite his restraints, maintained an air of defiance. You've made a serious mistake, human, Drex hissed. You don't understand the politics of this sector. The Vex acquisition fleet has powerful allies. Jackson regarded the alien calmly. Is that a threat, Captain Drex? A warning, the Vex replied. No one interferes with our operations, especially not for worthless Talarians. Jackson leaned forward, his voice low but intense. Let me offer you a warning in return. Humans have a saying. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Today, you attacked a peaceful ship that accidentally sent its distress call to us. Next time you consider preying on the defenseless, remember what happened here. Drex's scales darkened with anger. Who are you people? Where did you come from? Jackson straightened. We're humans from Earth, and we just changed the rules in this sector. As the Vex captain was led away, Jackson turned back to the viewport. The damaged Talarian ship, now surrounded by human vessels, looked fragile against the backdrop of space. Orders, sir? Rodriguez asked. Prepare to take the Starlight Wanderer in tow, Jackson commanded. We'll escort them to the nearest Allied outpost and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact with 2 new species. And the Vex prisoners, Jackson considered this. We'll turn them over to whatever authorities the Talarians suggest, but make sure the galaxy knows who stopped them. As humans and Talarians worked together to repair what they could of the damaged science vessel, word of the encounter was already spreading through Vex communication channels, and from there to the wider galactic community. Mysterious warriors from an unknown world had intervened against one of the most feared pirate fleets in the sector. The age of human isolation was over. The Deathworlders had arrived on the galactic stage. 3 weeks after the rescue of the Starlight Wanderer, the human battle group entered orbit around Tellus Prime, the homeworld of the Talarian Confederation. The blue-green planet below was beautiful, covered in vast oceans and lush continents, with low mountain ranges and sprawling cities built in harmony with the natural environment. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Jackson straightened his dress uniform. Quite a reception committee, he remarked, looking at the dozens of Talarian vessels that had gathered to escort them into orbit. They've been broadcasting welcome messages for the past hour, Commander Rodriguez reported. News of what happened has spread quickly through their confederation. Jackson nodded. First official diplomatic contact with a new species. Let's make it count. In the ship's main conference room, final preparations were underway for the reception. Captain Elira and the senior staff of the Starlight Wanderer had traveled aboard the Defiance during the journey to Tellus Prime, sharing knowledge and building the foundations of friendship between their peoples. Are you nervous? Lieutenant Rivera asked Elira as they stood by the viewport, watching the planet grow larger below them. The Talarian captain smiled. A little. My people are curious by nature, but cautious with new species. You humans are unlike anything. In our experience, Rivera laughed. We get that a lot. Elira's expression grew serious. The Confederation Council has been in emergency session since we sent word of your assistance. They're eager to establish formal relations with Earth. And we're just as eager, Rivera assured her. Though I suspect some of your people might find us intimidating. Perhaps at first, Elira admitted. But you saved my crew when you had no obligation to do so. That speaks volumes about your character as a species. The shuttle journey to the surface was filled with ceremony. An honor guard of Talarian defense ships escorted the human delegation through the atmosphere to the capital city of Harmonium. Below, crowds had gathered to witness the historic arrival. They've never seen anything like us before, Jackson said quietly as their shuttle approached the massive landing platform where Talarian officials waited. Remember, slow movements, friendly expressions. The human delegation, consisting of Admiral Jackson, Commander Rodriguez, Lieutenant Rivera, and several specialists in various fields, stepped onto Talarian soil for the first time. The gravity was noticeably lighter than Earth's, making each human feel strangely buoyant despite their efforts to move normally. A distinguished Talarian in ornate robes stepped forward. Welcome to Tellus Prime. I am High Counselor Varen of the Talarian Confederation. On behalf of all our people, I extend our deepest gratitude and friendship. Admiral Jackson bowed slightly. High Counselor, I am Admiral James Jackson of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We are honored by your welcome and look forward to building bridges between our worlds. As the formalities continued, news of the human arrival spread through the galaxy. On countless worlds, beings of all species watched broadcasts of the unusual bipeds who had emerged from the so-called Death World Zone and defeated a Vex pirate fleet with ease. In the Grand Council Chamber of Harmonium, the humans sat at a circular table alongside the highest officials of the Tellarian Confederation. The architecture of the chamber was breathtaking, soaring crystal spires that caught the light of the planet's twin suns, creating rainbow patterns across the polished stone floor. High Counselor Varen addressed the assembly. For centuries, our Confederation has explored the stars in peace. We have encountered many species, formed alliances based on mutual respect and scientific exchange. But we have also faced threats, races like the Vex who see our peaceful nature as weakness. The counselor turned to the human delegation. 3 weeks ago, one of our vessels sent a distress call that, by pure chance, reached a species we had never encountered. A species from a world we had classified as too extreme for advanced civilization to develop. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the assembled officials studied the humans with undisguised curiosity. These humans, Varen continued, responded, without hesitation. They traveled at dangerous speeds to reach our ship in time. They faced a superior Vex force without fear. And they did this not for political advantage or material gain, but because it was, in their words, the right thing to do. Admiral Jackson listened calmly, aware that this moment would shape relations between their species for generations to come. Today, Varen announced, I propose a formal alliance between the Tellarian Confederation and Earth. Not merely a treaty of friendship, but a mutual defense pact that will change the balance of power in this sector forever. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some officials expressed concern about allying with a Death World species whose capabilities were still largely unknown. Others pointed out the obvious advantages of having such powerful allies. Finally, one elderly counselor rose to speak. I have studied the preliminary reports on human biology and history, he said, his voice quavering slightly. Their world has gravity nearly twice our own. Their atmosphere contains elements we consider toxic. Their planet experiences weather, phenomena that would destroy our cities. He paused, looking directly at the humans. To survive such conditions, they evolved extraordinary strength, endurance, and adaptability. But more importantly, they developed something else, a drive to protect those weaker than themselves. This is rare in the galaxy, and precious beyond measure. When the vote came, it was nearly unanimous. The Tellarian-Human Alliance was born. Later that evening, at a celebration in the Grand Gardens of Harmonium, Admiral Jackson and Captain Elira stood watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of purple and gold. Your High Council moved quickly, Jackson observed. I didn't expect a formal alliance on the first day. Elira smiled. The Vex have been expanding their territory for years. Smaller confederations have fallen to their raiding fleets. We've been searching for a solution. And you think humans are that solution? I know what I saw on my ship, Elira replied. Your Marines moved through Vex boarding parties like they were training exercises. Your fleet disabled 3 warships without destroying them, showing both power and restraint. She turned to face him directly. Word is spreading, Admiral. The Vex have already withdrawn from 2 border systems. 3 other confederations have requested information about Earth. The galaxy is changing because of what your people did for mine. Jackson nodded thoughtfully. We've been isolated for most of our history, focused on our own survival. Perhaps it's time we found our place in the wider community of worlds. I think you already have, Elira said. News travels quickly. By now, most spacefaring races know about the Deathworlders who answered a distress call and defeated the Vex. More calls will come. As if on cue, Commander Rodriguez approached with a data tablet. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from 3 different systems, all distress calls requesting assistance against raiders or pirates. Jackson raised an eyebrow. It seems the word is out that Earth is open for business. Will you answer them? Elira asked. The Admiral looked out at the alien, sunset, so different from Earth's yet beautiful in its own way. For millennia, humans had fought each other for resources, territory, and ideology. Now they had found a new purpose among the stars. That's what humans do, Captain, he said with a smile. When someone calls for help, we answer. As night fell, on Tellus Prime, plans were already being made in the human fleet. New patrol routes, response protocols, training programs for joint operations with Tellarian ships. The Alliance would need time to grow, to establish proper channels and procedures. But the message was clear throughout the sector. The Death Worlders had arrived, and they had chosen to use their extraordinary capabilities not for conquest, but for protection. In the vast darkness between the stars, pirate captains and raiders altered their courses, avoiding regions where human ships might patrol. On peaceful worlds, beings looked to the skies with new hope, and in the communication centers of a dozen worlds, the same message was prepared and sent toward Earth. We need help. Please come, the humans would answer. It was what they did. The end. The stars shone coldly against the black emptiness of space. Among them, a sleek vessel drifted, its once smooth hull now scarred and broken. Emergency lights blinked weakly along its damaged sections. Inside the command center of the Nevaran, exploratory vessel, Admiral Trell stared at the holographic display with all four of his eyes. His blue skin had paled to a sickly gray from stress and fear. Status report, he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Officer Lim looked up from her console, her long fingers trembling. The main engines are beyond repair. Life support is failing. We have perhaps 6 hours before systems reach critical failure. Trell nodded slowly. His species was known for careful planning and caution. The Nevarans had spent centuries exploring the galaxy, mapping stars and studying unusual cosmic events. They had encountered many dangers, but nothing like the horror that had attacked them 12 hours ago. The auxiliary craft, he asked. Ready for launch, reported Captain Varn from across the bridge. We can fit all surviving crew members, but it has limited defensive capabilities. Trell moved to the viewport and looked out at the swirling clouds of the stellar nursery they had come to study. Somewhere in that beautiful cosmic mist lurked the things that had attacked them. The predators had appeared from nowhere. Strange, beings that seemed part biological, part machine. They had torn through the research vessel's hull as if it were paper. Do we know what they are? Trell asked the science officer. Science officer Jen shook her head. Her cranial ridges darkened with embarrassment. Nothing in our database matches their pattern. They appear to be drawn to our energy signatures. A sudden alarm blared through the command center. Officer Lim's hands flew across her controls. They're coming back, she shouted. Multiple contacts approaching from the nebula. Launch the auxiliary craft immediately, ordered Trell. All crew to evacuation stations now. The bridge erupted into controlled urgency as the Nevaran crew prepared to abandon their damaged vessel. Trell watched the holographic display as small dots representing his crew moved through the ship toward the escape craft. Admiral, said Captain Varn quietly, you should know. I've been analyzing their attack pattern. They're hunting us. This isn't random. Trell's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of deep concern in his species. Explain. They destroyed our engines first, then our weapons. They targeted communications last. They wanted us stranded and defenseless. The implications were clear and terrifying. These weren't mindless creatures, they were intelligent predators with strategy. 30 minutes later, Trell stood in the auxiliary craft as it disengaged from the dying research vessel. Through the viewports, the crew watched their ship grow smaller as they pulled away. Set course for the nearest Galactic Council outpost, Trell ordered. Navigation Officer Lim plotted the course, then made a small sound of distress. Admiral, at our maximum speed, the nearest outpost is 23 days away. And our supplies? Food and water for 15 days if strictly rationed. Trell was about to respond when the craft's sensors screamed an alert. On the display screen, several fast-moving objects had detached from the abandoned research vessel and were now heading toward them. "They followed us," whispered Captain Varn. "They were waiting." "Emergency thrust," ordered Trell. "All power to engines." The auxiliary craft surged forward, pushing the Neveran crew back against their seats. But on the displays, the pursuing predators gained ground with frightening speed. "We can't outrun them," reported Lim, her voice breaking. "Intercept in 4 hours." Trell made the hardest decision of his long career. "Send a distress call." The communications officer turned to him, eyes wide. "Sir, we're in uncharted space. The only civilizations within range are non-council worlds, including—" He hesitated. "Including what?" demanded Trell. "Including the prohibited system. The Death World." The command center went silent. Every Neveran knew about the Death World. The Galactic Council had discovered it centuries ago, a savage planet with crushing gravity, extreme weather, and thousands of predator species. Somehow, despite these conditions, intelligent life had evolved there. The Council had classified the planet as too dangerous to contact and placed it under observation only. "Sir," continued the communications officer, "Council protocol strictly forbids contact with non-aligned worlds, especially prohibited ones." Trell looked at the faces of his crew, at the fear in their eyes, then at the display showing the predators. Gaining on them, he made his choice. "Protocol won't save our lives today. Send the distress call on all frequencies, maximum power. Include our coordinates." "Sir," protested Captain Varn, "the inhabitants of the Death World are violent and unpredictable. They might be worse than what's chasing us." "We have 4 hours until those things catch us," replied Trell firmly. "I'm not leaving any possibility untried. Send the signal." The communications officer nodded and began the transmission. The universal distress call, a mathematical sequence recognized across the galaxy as a cry for help, spread outward in all directions. Trell knew the risk they were taking. If the Death Worlders received their message, there was no telling what might happen. The Council had kept that world isolated for good reason. But facing certain death from the predators behind them, even the unknown dangers of the Death World, seemed like a chance worth taking. The signal raced through space, crossing vast distances as the Neveran auxiliary craft fled from its pursuers. 3 light-years away, on a blue-green planet circling an ordinary yellow star, a signal detector began to beep. Dr. Alan Miller yawned as he checked the monitors at the Deep Space Listening Post in Nevada. The midnight shift was always quiet. Humanity had been broadcasting signals into space for decades and listening for any response. So far, the universe had remained silent. The sudden beeping startled him fully awake. He adjusted his glasses and stared at the screen in disbelief. "That can't be right," he muttered. The pattern on his screen was unlike anything he'd seen before. A repeating sequence of pulses that couldn't possibly be natural. He ran it through the analysis program, and the computer's response made his heart race. Artificial signal detected. Pattern matches. Theoretical distress call parameters. Signal origin. Coordinates attached. With shaking hands, Miller reached for the phone. "This is Deep Space Listening Post 6. Get me Director Hammond immediately." "Yes, I know what time it is. This can't wait." 20 minutes later, Director Hammond stood behind Miller, watching the signal repeat. "You're certain?" asked Hammond, his face pale. "The mathematical sequence is unmistakable," replied Miller. "It's a distress call from deep space, and sir, it includes coordinates. They're asking for help." Hammond straightened his back. "Contact Space Command and get me the President. Humanity just received its first message from the stars, and it's a cry for help. God help us all if we ignore it." As dawn broke over Earth, an emergency meeting convened at the White House. For the first time in human history, leaders gathered not to discuss earthly matters, but to decide how to respond to a plea from the stars. Humanity's first contact with alien life would not be a peaceful exchange of knowledge, but a desperate call for rescue. And the Death Worlders of Earth would soon show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The United Nations Emergency Chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every nation with space capabilities sat around the massive circular table. Screens on the walls showed military leaders, scientists, and government officials who couldn't attend in person. President Rodriguez of the North American Alliance stood at the center. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, and she hadn't slept in 36 hours. Yet her voice remained strong as she addressed the assembly. "We've confirmed it beyond doubt," she said. "The signal is not from Earth. It's not from any of our space stations or probes. It's from deep space, and it matches every theoretical model we have for what an alien distress call might look like." A murmur ran through the room. Some faces showed excitement, others fear. "The signal includes coordinates," continued Dr. Miller, now standing beside the president. He tapped his tablet and a star map appeared on the main screen. "It's coming from here, approximately 26 light-years away." The Russian representative, General Petrov, leaned forward. "How do we know this isn't a trap? For all we know, this could be bait to lure us into an ambush." Director Hammond from Space Command responded, "We don't know for certain, but the signal pattern shows signs of damage and urgent repetition. Our analysts believe it's genuine." "Even if it is real," said the Chinese delegate, "do we have any obligation to respond? This isn't even our solar system." President Rodriguez looked around the room. "When sailors hear a distress call at sea, they respond. It doesn't matter what flag the sinking ship flies, it's the law of the sea and one of humanity's oldest moral principles." Admiral Jenkins of the Earth Defense Fleet stood up. He was an older man with gray hair and more battle experience than anyone in the room. "Madam President, if I may speak freely." She nodded. "We've spent the last 50 years building a fleet to defend Earth from potential threats. We've developed faster-than-light drives, energy shields, and weapons that could level mountains. All because we feared what might be out there." He paused. "But if our first act upon hearing a cry for help from the stars is to hide behind our planet and do nothing, then what was it all for?" Silence fell over the chamber. Admiral Jenkins continued, "I recommend we deploy the fleet. Whoever sent that signal needs help now." The Japanese representative spoke next. "If we do this, we must be prepared for contact with an alien species. This would change human history forever." "History is already changed," replied President Rodriguez. "The question is whether we want that history to record that we turned our backs on a cry for help." After 3 more hours of debate, the vote was held. The result: 157 nations in favor of sending a response, 42 against, 18 abstaining. Earth would answer the call. Captain Thomas Reed walked through the massive hangar bay of the UES Defender. At 800 meters long, it was the largest warship humans had ever built. Around it, smaller cruisers, destroyers, and support ships were being prepared for the mission. Commander Maria Okafor, his second-in-command, fell into step beside him. "Final preparations are almost complete, Captain. 30 ships, fully armed, and supplied." Reed nodded. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and dark eyes that missed nothing. "And the coordinates?" "Programmed into all navigation systems. It will take 3 jumps to reach them." Reed stopped and watched as crews loaded the last supplies onto the ships. "Has the signal changed?" "No, sir. Still transmitting, but weaker now. Whatever sent it might be running out of power. Or worse." Reed's jaw tightened. He had commanded ships for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this mission. No human had. They would be the first to make contact with alien life, and they were heading into what might be a combat situation. "What are your thoughts, Commander?" he asked quietly. Okafor considered the question carefully. "I think we're doing the right thing, sir, but I'm also terrified." Reed smiled slightly. "That makes 2 of us." "The crew is calling this Operation Good Samaritan," she added. "Let's hope the neighbors we're about to meet appreciate the reference." An hour later, Reed stood on the bridge of the Defender. The massive view screen showed Earth growing smaller as they moved toward the jump point. "All ships report ready." "Captain," announced Communications Officer Taylor. "Fleet is in formation." "Very good." Reed sat in the command chair and opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Captain Reed. Today we embark on the most important mission in human history. We don't know what we'll find when we reach those coordinates. We don't know who sent the signal or what kind of danger they're in. He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. But we do know this. Somebody out there needs help, and Earth has answered. Every person on these ships volunteered for this mission. That says something important about who we are. Reed closed the channel and nodded to the navigation officer. Begin jump sequence. Around the fleet, powerful engines charged. Space itself seemed to bend as 30 ships carrying over 8,000 human beings prepared to leap across the stars. Jump in 3, 2, 1. In a flash of light, the fleet vanished from Earth's solar system. Far across the galaxy, in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, alarms sounded for the first time in 300 years. High Counselor Vex, leader of the most advanced civilization in the known universe, stared in disbelief at the emergency report. This cannot be correct, he said to his advisors. Check again. Military advisor Dorn shook his head. The information is verified, High Counselor. 30 large ships have left the prohibited world. They're using faster-than-light technology we didn't know they possessed. And they're heading directly toward the Never-End distress signal. How is this possible? Demanded Representative Shen. Earth shouldn't have developed FTL capability for at least another century. Clearly, our observations were flawed, replied Vex, and now the Deathworlders are loose in the galaxy, armed and responding to a distress call that never should have been sent. We must intercept them, said Shen. If humans make contact with the Never-End crew, our nearest peacekeeping fleet is 2 weeks away at maximum speed, interrupted Dorn. The Earth vessels will reach the coordinates in 6 days. The council chamber erupted into panicked discussion. Species that had known peace for millennia now faced a terrifying new reality. The humans of Earth were coming and they were bringing weapons. Vex raised his hands for silence. We must warn Admiral Trell immediately. If he's still alive, he needs to know what's coming. And may the stars help us all if the Deathworlders decide we're the enemy. Aboard the auxiliary craft, Admiral Trell watched the pursuing predators grow closer on the scanner. Their supplies were dwindling. Hope was fading. Then Officer Lim shouted from the communications station, Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. Trell moved quickly to her side. Put it through. The message was brief but clear. Earth had responded to their distress call. A fleet of 30 warships was on its way. Warships? Whispered Captain Varn. The Deathworlders sent warships? They sent help, corrected Trell. That's what matters. But as he looked at the second part of the message, describing what the Council knew about humans, a shiver ran through him. The Deathworlders were coming, and their reputation painted them as the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Trell looked out at the stars. We asked for help, he said quietly. We're about to find out what that means on Earth. The human fleet dropped out of FTL travel with a flash of light. 30 warships appeared in formation, their engines glowing against the darkness of space. On the bridge of the UES Defender, Captain Reed leaned forward in his command chair. Status report. All ships present and accounted for, Captain, reported Commander Okafor. No damage from the jumps. Scanners. What do we have? Science Officer Jones studied his console intently. Sir, I'm detecting 2 vessels approximately 500,000 kilometers from our position. One appears damaged and adrift. The second is smaller and it's being pursued by several objects. Put it on screen, ordered Reed. The main view screen showed a small, sleek craft fleeing from strange-looking entities. The pursuing objects were unlike anything the humans had seen before. Part machine, part creature, with glowing energy. Patterns flowing across their surfaces. Life signs? Asked Reed. Confirmed on the smaller craft, replied Jones. Definitely not human. The pursuing entities are unclear. They're giving off both biological and technological signatures. Reed made his decision instantly. Battle stations. All ships defensive formation around the fleeing craft. Alarms sounded throughout the fleet as crews rushed to combat positions. The Defender's weapon systems came online along with its powerful shields. "Open a channel to the fleeing vessel," ordered Reed. Communications Officer Taylor worked at her console. "Channel open, sir. I'm transmitting in all known frequencies and formats. No response yet. This is Captain Thomas Reed of the United Earth Space Navy vessel Defender," Reed said clearly. "We received your distress call and are here to assist. Please respond." Silence filled the bridge as they waited. Then suddenly a burst of strange sounds came through the speakers. "Our translators can't make sense of it yet," said Taylor, "but they're definitely responding." "That's good enough for now," replied Reed. "Tactical, target the pursuing entities. Warning shots first. Let's see if they can be scared off." Weapons Officer Wilson nodded. "Targeting systems locked. Firing warning shots." The Defender's main laser cannons fired, sending bright beams of energy across the bow of the pursuing entities. For a moment, everything stopped. The entities halted their pursuit, seeming to hang motionless in space. "I think it worked," said Okafor hopefully. Then as one, the entities changed direction, heading straight for the human fleet. "They're coming toward us," reported Wilson. "Fast, very fast." Reed's expression hardened. "All ships, defensive positions. If they attack, you are authorized to use full force." The mysterious entities accelerated toward the human vessels, their energy signatures growing stronger. When they were within 10,000 kilometers, they fired, strange plasma-like bursts shooting toward the lead ships. "Shields up," shouted Reed as the first shots hit the Defender. The massive warship shuddered slightly, but its shields held. "Shields at 92%, reported the defensive systems officer. "Minor damage only." Reed had seen enough. "All ships return fire. Full combat protocol." The human fleet erupted with weapons fire. Lasers, railguns, and missile systems all engaged at once. The dark void of space lit up like day as 30 warships unleashed their firepower. The entities tried to dodge, but they were facing more firepower than they had ever encountered. 3 exploded immediately. 2 more followed seconds later. The remaining entities tried to retreat, but the human vessels pursued them relentlessly. Within minutes, it was over. The strange entities were destroyed or scattered. "Stand down from combat alert," ordered Reed. "Damage report." 2 ships reporting minor shield damage, replied Okafor. "No casualties. The enemy was powerful but not very durable." Reed nodded. "Set course for the alien vessel. Let's introduce ourselves properly." Admiral Trell and his crew watched in stunned silence as the massive human fleet destroyed their pursuers. The Krell predators, which had hunted them relentlessly for days, were eliminated in minutes. "Such power," whispered Captain Varn. The council message wasn't exaggerating. Trell studied the human ships through the viewport. They were unlike any design he had seen before, functional rather than elegant, with visible weapon systems and thick armor plating. They were built for war, yet they had come to save strangers. "The lead ship is approaching," reported Officer Lim. "They're hailing us again." "Put it through," ordered Trell, "and activate our universal translator." The translator was a sophisticated device that analyzed language patterns and created approximate translations. It would be rough at first, but would improve with more samples. The view screen activated, showing a human face for the first time. Captain Reed looked at the aliens with undisguised curiosity, but maintained his professional demeanor. "This is Captain Reed of Earth," he said. "Are you injured? Do you require medical assistance?" The translator struggled but produced a workable version in the Nevaran language. Trell stepped forward. "I am Admiral Trell of the Nevaran Exploratory Fleet. We are grateful for your intervention. Some of my crew are injured, yes." The translator converted his words to English, allowing Reed to understand. "We'll send a medical team to dock with your vessel," Reed replied. "Do not be alarmed by our appearance. We may look different from you." Trell gave the Nevaran gesture of agreement. "We understand. We will prepare for your arrival." 20 minutes later, a human shuttle docked with the Nevaran auxiliary craft. The airlock cycled, and for the first time in galactic history, humans, and Neveran stood face to face. Dr. Williams led the medical team, freezing momentarily at the sight of the blue-skinned, four-eyed aliens. Then her training took over. "I'm Dr. Williams," she said, approaching carefully. "Where are your injured?" Captain Reed followed with a small security team, their weapons holstered but visible. He looked around the alien craft with interest, noting its advanced technology and unusual design. Admiral Trell stepped forward. The human was taller than him, with strange-colored skin and only 2 eyes. Yet there was something recognizable in the way the human carried himself. A commander's bearing that transcended species. "Captain Reed," Trell said, "you came a very long way to help strangers." Reed nodded. "That's what we do when someone's in trouble. The Krell, the things that were chasing us, they've attacked many vessels in this region. No one has been able to defeat them before." "They caught us by surprise," said Reed. "That usually only works once." As the human medical team treated the injured Neverans, Reed and Trell spoke more, their translators gradually improving. Trell explained their research mission and how they'd been attacked. Reed shared basic information about Earth and humanity's recent development of FTL technology. What neither of them knew was that a Galactic Council observation vessel had arrived at the edge of the system and was watching everything. On the Council vessel, High Counselor Vex watched the humans and Neverans interact with growing alarm. "This is worse than we feared," he said to his advisors. "Not only did the humans destroy the Krell with ease, but now they're establishing friendly contact with the Neverans." "Should we intervene?" asked Representative Shen. "And face those weapons?" replied Military Advisor Dorn. "I think not. We underestimated the humans severely. Their technology is far more advanced than our projections suggested." Vex made his decision. "We need to speak with them directly. The secret of Earth's isolation is over. Now we must deal with the reality that the Deathworlders have joined galactic society, whether we invited them or not." As the Council vessel moved toward the human fleet, Vex wondered if the galaxy would ever be the same again. The humans had answered a call for help with overwhelming force. What would they do when they learned they had been watched and kept isolated for centuries? The mistake was made. The signal was sent. And now the future of galactic peace rested on the first conversations between humanity and the Galactic Council. "Captain, we have another ship entering the area," reported Science Officer Jones. "Much larger than the Neveran vessel. Different design entirely." Captain Reed had just returned to the Defender after his initial meeting with Admiral Trell. He looked at the main view screen, which showed a massive, elegant ship approaching slowly. Unlike the functional design of human vessels or the sleek lines of the Neveran craft, this new ship seemed almost artistic. Curves and spirals blended, with technology in a way that suggested centuries of refinement. "Are they broadcasting any signals?" Reed asked. Communications Officer Taylor nodded. "Yes, sir. They're requesting to speak with the commander of our fleet. Their transmission is already compatible with our systems, almost as if they expected us." Reed exchanged glances with Commander Okafor. "That's interesting. Put them through." The view screen changed to show an alien unlike the Neverans. This being had pale green skin, 6-fingered hands, and a high domed head with large silvery eyes. It wore formal-looking robes with complex patterns. "I am High Counselor Vex of the Galactic Council," the alien said, the words translated smoothly into English. "On behalf of the unified species of the galaxy, I request a meeting with Earth's representatives." Reed maintained his composure despite his surprise. "This is Captain Thomas Reed of the United Earth Space Navy. We would be pleased to meet with you, High Counselor. However, I must ask, how do you know about Earth? And why does your translator already speak our language?" A flicker of discomfort crossed Vex's face. "These matters would be best discussed in person, Captain. With your permission, I will shuttle to your vessel with a small diplomatic team." Reed nodded. "Granted. We'll prepare to receive you." When the transmission ended, Okafor turned to Reed. "Sir, this implies they've known about us for some time." "Yes," Reed replied grimly, "and chose not to make contact. Let's find out why. 1 hour later, Captain Reed stood in the Defender's conference room alongside Admiral Trell, who had been invited to join the meeting. The door opened and High Counselor Vex entered with 2 other aliens of different species, one resembling a tall, thin humanoid with iridescent skin, the other shorter with 4 arms and a face that reminded Reed somewhat of an earth insect. Captain Reed, Admiral Trell, Vex said with a formal bow. This is Representative Shen of the Doraxian Collective and Military Advisor Dorn. We appreciate your willingness to meet. Reed gestured to the specially adjusted chairs around the table. Please be seated. Once everyone was comfortable, Reed spoke directly. High Counselor, you clearly know who we are, while we knew nothing about you until today. I think some explanation is in order. Vex folded his 6-fingered hands. Captain, the Galactic Council has existed for over 12,000 years. We unite more than 8,000 species in peaceful cooperation across this section of the galaxy. And yes, we have known about Earth for approximately 3 centuries. And you chose to keep us isolated, Reed said. It wasn't a question. We did. Vex glanced at his colleagues before continuing. Captain, your world is classified in our records as a death world, a planet with environmental conditions so extreme that most galactic citizens would perish there within hours. Earth doesn't seem that harsh to us, Reed replied. Your gravity is 1.5 times the galactic average. Your oxygen levels would be toxic to many species. Your planet contains over 100 predatory species that would be lethal to most galactic citizens, and that's before we consider your extreme weather patterns and tectonic activity. Admiral Trell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. High Counselor, while these concerns are valid, they do not explain a complete isolation policy. Representative Shen spoke for the first time, her voice melodic but firm. It wasn't just the planet's conditions that concerned us, it was also the inhabitants. Reed raised an eyebrow. Meaning humans. Your species evolved under constant threat, explained Shen. Your historical records show thousands of years of warfare. Your entertainment glorifies violence. Your languages contain hundreds of words for different types of conflict. And your first response to a distress call, added military advisor, Dorn, was to send 30 heavily armed warships. Reed leaned forward. Warships that saved Admiral Trell and his crew while your council was still deciding what to do. The room fell silent. Admiral Trell shifted uncomfortably before speaking. If I may, Captain Reed, he said carefully. The Council's caution regarding new species is not without precedent. There have been unfortunate first contacts in the past. And yet, replied Reed, when you were in danger, you sent a distress call that the Council now tells us violated their protocols. You took a chance on unknown species, including us dangerous humans, rather than wait for official help. Trell's skin darkened slightly, the never-an equivalent of a blush. Yes, I did. High Counselor Vex raised a hand placatingly. Captain Reed, please understand our position. The Council must consider the safety of thousands of peaceful species. We observe developing worlds until they demonstrate certain qualities. Technological advancement, yes, but also cultural stability and peaceful intentions. And who decides when we've demonstrated enough of these qualities, asked Reed. Who appointed you the gatekeepers of the galaxy? Before Vex could answer, the conference room door opened, and Communications Officer Taylor rushed in. Captain, sorry to interrupt, she said breathlessly, but we're receiving a transmission from Earth. President Rodriguez is requesting to speak with you, and our new guests immediately. Reed nodded. Put her through to this room. The wall screen activated, showing President Rodriguez in the Oval Office. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of the aliens, but she maintained her composure. Captain Reed, I see our visitors have arrived. I am President Elena Rodriguez of the North American Alliance, currently serving as Earth's unified representative. Vex stood and bowed formally. President Rodriguez, I am High Counselor Vex of the Galactic Council. This is quite unprecedented, but I'm honored to meet you. The honor is mine, Counselor, she replied smoothly. Captain Reed, I understand from your reports that our neighbors have been watching us for some time. Yes, Madam President, for about 300 years. Rodriguez's expression didn't change, but her voice cooled. I see. And they chose not to introduce themselves until now. Vex stepped forward. Madam President, I assure you, this was done with the best intentions. High Counselor, she interrupted gently. On Earth we have a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Your council made decisions about my people without our knowledge or consent. You denied us the chance to join a galactic community that apparently includes thousands of other species. We were concerned about our warlike tendencies, our dangerous planet. Rodriguez smiled slightly. And yet when Admiral Trell sent his distress call, it was Earth that responded, not your council. Military Advisor Dorn bristled. Our nearest peacekeeping fleet was 2 weeks away. Then perhaps, replied Rodriguez, your peacekeeping forces need reorganization. Or perhaps you've grown too comfortable in your peace to remember that sometimes protecting others requires action, not discussion. The aliens looked stunned at her directness. Reed suppressed a smile. Rodriguez continued, High Counselor, humanity is now aware of the larger galaxy. We cannot and will not return to isolation. The question is, how do we move forward from here? Vex looked at his colleagues, then back at the screen. Madam President, the usual protocol for new species is a probationary period. No, Rodriguez said simply. Earth will not accept second-class status. We saved Council citizens when the Council couldn't. We've earned our place at the table. Admiral Trell suddenly spoke up. She's right. All eyes turned to him. The humans acted when no one else could, Trell said firmly. They risked their lives for people they'd never met. If that's not the quality the Council claims to value, then what is? High Counselor Vex looked from Trell to Reed, to the image of President Rodriguez. Something in his expression changed. A recognition, perhaps, that the galaxy had shifted irreversibly. Perhaps, he said slowly, it is time for the Council to reconsider certain traditions. 6 months had passed since the first contact between humanity and the Galactic Council. The massive Council chamber, located on a space station at the center of governed space, had been renovated to accommodate its newest members. The human section required stronger gravity generators, different atmospheric settings, and more robust furniture. These changes had initially been met with resistance from some Council species, but now they were simply accepted as part of the new reality. Admiral Jenkins, formerly of Earth's Space Navy, and now serving as humanity's first representative to the Council, stood at the central podium. His dress uniform gleamed under the chamber's lights as he addressed the assembled representatives of thousands of species. The joint human Neveran defense fleet has completed its first mission, he reported. We've established a containment perimeter around Krell space. No civilian vessels have been attacked in the sector for the past 60 days. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. The Krell, which had preyed on research and transport ships for decades, had finally been contained. High Counselor Vex, who still led the Council despite the recent changes, nodded respectfully. The Council acknowledges humanity's contribution to galactic security. However, we remain concerned about the rapid expansion of your military presence. Jenkins smiled slightly. With respect, Counselor, we've deployed exactly as agreed in our treaty. 20 defense stations along established trade routes, each with no more than 3 patrol ships. That's hardly an invasion force. The concern isn't the number of ships, said Representative Shen. It's how quickly you built them, and how effective your weapons have proven against threats that troubled us for generations. Perhaps, replied Jenkins, that says more about how long the Council tolerated these threats than about our response to them. Before the debate could heat up further, Admiral Trell stepped forward. Following his rescue by humans and his controversial support of Earth's admission to the Council, he had been demoted from his explorer rank. Now he served as the liaison between the Neveran fleet and human forces. If I may address the Council, he said, before we continue debating human military presence, we should acknowledge something important. The defense perimeter has already saved 27 ships and over 800 lives from multiple species. Actions speak louder than concerns. The chamber went quiet. Trell had become known for his direct approach, a quality he attributed to his time with humans. High Counselor, Vex sighed. No one disputes the results, Admiral Trell, but the Council has maintained peace for 12,000 years through careful deliberation and consensus. Humanity's approach is different. Different isn't always wrong, replied Trell. The galaxy is changing. Perhaps the Council needs to change with it. On the bridge of the UES Pathfinder, Captain Reed reviewed star charts with Commander Okafor. Following the diplomatic breakthrough, Reed had been given command of one of Earth's new exploration vessels. Though still armed, the Pathfinder was built primarily for scientific missions and first contact scenarios. The Council has approved our expedition to the Cygnus Arm, said Okafor, pointing to a section of the map. We'll be the first to officially explore this region. Reed nodded. And unofficially? Their observers have done basic surveys but never made contact with any developing worlds they found. She paused. Sound familiar? Reed smiled wryly. Let's hope we do better than they did with Earth. The door to the bridge opened, and Captain Varn entered. After the initial contact, several Neverans had requested to serve on human ships, eager to learn from the species that had saved them. Varn, formerly under Admiral Trell's command, was now Reed's second officer. Captain, Varn reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Council. Another distress call has been detected in Sector 47. Reed straightened immediately. From who? A trading vessel from the Pelleran Republic. They report being attacked by an unknown species, not Krell. How far? 2 jumps from our position. We're the closest ship with adequate defenses. Reed didn't hesitate. Set course, maximum speed. As the crew prepared for the jump, Varn moved closer to Reed and spoke quietly. Captain, the Council advises caution. They suggest waiting for one of their peacekeeping vessels. How long would that take? 3 days. Reed shook his head. People in danger don't have 3 days, Varn. You of all people should understand that. The Navarran's 4 eyes blinked in agreement. I do. I merely wanted to inform you of the official recommendation. Noted. Now let's go save some lives. In his private chamber on the Council station, High Counselor Vex met with his oldest advisor, Representative Ula. Unlike most Council members, Ula had supported Earth's admission from the beginning. Another distress call, another human ship. Rushing to help, sighed Vex. They're changing everything, Ula. The elderly representative nodded. Change was inevitable, my friend. We grew too comfortable, too convinced of our own wisdom. You think I was wrong about Earth? I think you were right to be cautious, but wrong to keep them isolated for so long. Ula looked out at the stars through the chamber's viewport. For millennia, we avoided problems rather than solving them. We mapped dangerous regions but never secured them. We observed developing worlds but never helped them. We were preserving peace, protested Vex. Were we? Asked Ula gently. Or were we preserving comfort? The Krell hunted in our space for centuries. Pirate groups raided outer colonies with little consequence. When Admiral Trell sent his distress call, our nearest help was weeks away. Vex had no answer to this. The humans are dangerous, continued Ula. No one disputes that. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They spent thousands of years fighting each other. But look what that created. A species that runs toward danger instead of away from it. A people who answer distress calls from strangers. And build warships, added Vex. Yes, because their world taught them to be ready for threats. Ula placed a hand on Vex's shoulder. The Council needs humanity, old friend. We need their protective instinct, their willingness to act. They need our wisdom and experience. Together we might build something better than either of us had alone. 1 year after first contact, the UES Defender returned to Earth for refit and crew rotation. Captain Reed stood in the observation lounge with Admiral Trell, watching shuttles, ferry personnel to and from the surface. Your world is beautiful from orbit, said Trell. Hard to believe it's classified as a death world. Reed smiled. One person's death world is another's home. The Council is still adjusting to your species. Trell admitted. Many are uncomfortable with how quickly humans have integrated into galactic society. Change is uncomfortable, replied Reed, but sometimes necessary. Trell's 4 eyes blinked in the pattern humans now recognized as agreement. The Galactic Survey just classified 17 new worlds. 3 are potential death worlds with developing civilizations. And the Council has approved a new first contact protocol. Instead of isolation, these worlds will receive gradual introduction to galactic society. And the teams making those introductions will include humans. Reed raised an eyebrow. They trust us with that? They recognize your unique perspective. Who better to welcome new Deathworlders than other Deathworlders? A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched Earth rotate slowly below. One mistake changed everything, said Reed finally. You sent a distress call without knowing who might answer. And you Deathworlders sent a fleet, finished Trell. Some in the Council still fear what that means. Reed turned to face his alien friend. Then they still don't understand. We didn't send our ships to conquer, we sent them to protect. That's always been the difference. Trell nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why the universe needed humanity all along. Not despite your dangerous world, but because of it. You learned lessons the rest of us never had to face. Outside the viewport, a new ship was moving into orbit, one of the joint human-Neveran vessels crewed by members of both species. Its name was painted proudly on the hull, UES Alliance. One mistake, repeated Reed, watching the ship. Or, maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. No, agreed Trell, his voice certain. It was the best decision I ever made.